I'm going to administer your oath to you, sir. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. State your name, please.
David Thompson.
And you're residing in the, temporarily in the Walworth jail, but residing, you're a prisoner of the federal government, is that right?
Yes.
Where are you presently housed?
Ozaukee County Jail.
Ozaukee County Jail?
Yes.
All right. Did you want to examine him about his record? Let me just tell you, sir. It is lawful for the attorneys, when someone is a witness, to question the person about the prior criminal history.
Okay.
Yeah, because ultimately the jury may be given an instruction about weighing the testimony of witnesses and comparing and considering the fact that someone's been convicted of a crime in the past, or in some instances about specific instances of conduct in the past that may be proper for the jury to consider. So that's why these questions will be asked now and will be asked when the jury comes in. You understand?
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Go ahead.
Also, what was his thinking? You said there was a theft conviction from this year? Because I don't have a record of that either. So, what do you have?
You want me to ask questions? You want to ask
I want to ask you a question first about this record that you have of 2007.
Yeah, that conviction.
Okay, Mr. Thompson, are you familiar, are you aware of any convictions this year out of Milwaukee County, or I'm sorry, the year 2007 out of Milwaukee County? Were you convicted of any felony or misdemeanor offenses in the year 2007 in Milwaukee County?
Yes, I received a 4-month sentence for a misdemeanor conviction. I had one sentence dismissed.
Okay, so you had one, you were sentenced to 4 months in the county jail?
For house correction, county time, yeah.
Okay, and that was a misdemeanor theft conviction?
Yes.
In 2007, correct?
Yes, April of 2000. I got sentenced on it in October of 2000.
And then do you recall a previous conviction for operating a vehicle without owner's consent? Let's see.
92.
Let me get to it here. November 17th of 1986.
Oh, 86, yes.
So you were convicted of operating a vehicle without owner's consent November 17th, 1986.
Yes.
And then you recall being convicted on July 24th, 1992 on 2 offenses, operating a vehicle without owner's consent and party to the crime of armed robbery.
Yes.
And then you were convicted in 2003 of 2 counts of two misdemeanor counts, 1 obstructing an officer, 1 possession of drug paraphernalia.
Yes.
And then you were convicted in 2007 of 1 misdemeanor theft count.
Yes.
Now, are there any other felony or misdemeanor offenses that you can recall as an adult?
No, that should be
That's
it.
your recollection?
Yeah.
So that would be a total of 6 felony or 6 adult convictions as either misdemeanors or felonies.
Yes.
And you're presently being held on bank robbery charges by the federal government?
Yes.
And have you pled to any of those charges, been convicted of those charges yet?
Yes, I pled to him.
And how many charges have you pled to?
2.
And when did you plead to those charges?
December 20th.
Of 2007?
Yes.
And that was in federal court?
Yes.
And you're awaiting sentencing on those charges?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I would propose then, Your Honor, that if Mr. Thompson is asked the question, have you been convicted of a crime, the answer would be yes. And if he's asked how many times, the answer would be 8.
Well, I'm not going to tell him what his answer should be. He has to tell the truth.
I understand, but if he
and the
answers...
question is whether he's subject to impeachment. And you're proposing that if he answers yes and 8, or a greater number, that he's not subject to impeachment.
That is correct.
I'm under the prior conviction of crime statute.
Yep, Yes, sir.
Mr. Albee?
Can I make some inquiries?
You may.
Mr. Thompson, you're charged with arson to a building in the late 80s, right?
Got dismissed.
Charged with battery in the late 80s?
Got dismissed.
Any other misdemeanor convictions in the late 80s?
I think a theft from like 87 or 88.
You had a misdemeanor theft?
Yeah. I think I did like 30 days house correction time for.
Anything else you remember?
The rest would be juvenile.
I'd ask that the number be 9.
You weren't a juvenile when you were convicted of the misdemeanor offense of theft? You were an adult?
I was an adult.
Okay, well then I'd say 9.
All right. Anything else? Or will we bring the jury in? Hearing nothing. Would you
No, Your Honor, I'm sorry, there's nothing else from the state.
I'm still trying to hook up the laptop.
Oh, you're still trying to hook up the laptop?
The whole system has to be brought down. All the microphone system
Is that going to affect my computer here? Because I'm in the middle of preparing an order.
What are you guys playing?
We're
Oh,
gonna
just
play-
microphones? All right, well, do whatever needs to be done.
Conversation of him with him and
I'm sorry. Say again?
Mr. Thompson is going to testify that it was Mr. Jensen that got on the phone to speak with Mr. Thompson's fiancee. And the purpose of this conversation is that it's in furtherance of this plan that the two of them had hatched about abducting and sitting on Edward Klug to keep Edward Klug from testifying in this trial. That's the purpose that Mr. Thompson is being called for, Your Honor. He's going to testify that he
You
had...
said Mr. Jensen was then going to get on the stand, and maybe I misunderstood, and I think...
Well, you did.
Boy,
Well,
this
if I
trial
said
takes
that...
some odd turns, but this is...
If I said that, Your Honor, I misspoke, and it's possible. I've been very sick over the weekend, and I'm still in the recovery stages. But what if I did say that Mr.
I don't know if you did. I thought you did. She says no.
Okay, so what I thought I'd said was that Mr. Thompson is going to be testifying about a phone call that occurred between himself and his fiancée. And in the midst of that phone call, Mr. Jensen got on the phone and was speaking with Mr. Thompson's fiancée. And that this conversation was in furtherance of this conspiracy or this plan to abduct Mr. Klug and prevent him from testifying in this case. That's the purpose of Mr. Thompson's testimony.
Did you want to comment on this at all, Mr. Albee?
No.
Is this something that requires a special instruction?
I don't believe so.
Well, it's evidence of other crimes, wrongs, and acts, but it's not what we typically encounter. So unless I'm requested, I'm not going to give any kind of a special instruction on it. And I'm hearing nothing, so, okay. All right, ready to go then?
I think they're still trying to figure out how to get this computer to work,
Okay.
Your Honor. There's a technological problem. If worse comes to worse, we've got a CD player. We can just bring it up here and hook it up. But we were hoping to be able to use it on the...
Say it again. That's what I say, huh? Oh. Okay. So good, good? Yeah, good. So good. All righty. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, thanks. Yeah, here's it. Thanks.
Yeah, so, we'll probably get a call sometime today to go, this is no way to go get to that.
Okay.
Alright?
Yeah.
You talk to Mom yet?
No, I called, nobody answered.
Sorry, man, real quick.
Okay, Your Honor, I guess we're ready to proceed.
There were large portions of that I wasn't able to make out, just so you know.
I hope the jury can hear it better.
Well, I will admit that age takes its toll on hearing, and so I...
And you're off to one side. And it might be-
well, anyway. Would you ask the jurors to come in, please? Good morning, everyone. And welcome back, and we'll continue with the state's case. Mr. Jemwitz.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, will you please state your full name and spell your last?
Just point out, the witness has already been sworn. Go ahead.
For the record, will you please state your full name and spell your last name?
David Thompson, Thompson.
And Mr. Thompson, you're presently an inmate, a federal prisoner, is that correct?
Yes,
Have you ever been convicted of a crime before?
yes,
How many times?
9 times.
And that includes 2 most recent convictions at the federal level?
Yes,
You just pled to 2 charges in December of 2007?
yes, I did.
And what were those charges that you pled to?
Bank robbery,
2 counts?
yes.
And have I offered you anything in exchange for your testimony in this case here today?
No,
Have you, when you entered into this plea agreement, which apparently you entered into with the federal, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, was any discussion made about your participation or your testimony in this case?
no,
So you received no concessions from the U.S. Attorney as a result of your cooperation with the authorities in this case?
no, I did not.
Now, Mr. Thompson, there was a time when you were in the Kenosha County Jail at the same time as Mark Jensen, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how is it that as a federal inmate you'd end up in the Kenosha County Jail, do you know?
Well, they have a contract with federal marshals to hold federal inmates there.
So tell me, who was in the jail first? Were you there first and Mr. Jensen arrived, or was Mr. Jensen there first and then you arrived?
He was there when I arrived.
And tell me about your first interactions with Mark Jensen.
Well, when I first got on the pod with him, I didn't say much to him. I had at one point asked him to make a phone call for me, which he did after we had a brief conversation. And from that point on, I think maybe over the next couple of days, we just started talking on a daily basis.
Well, let's go back to this first conversation with about a telephone call. You'd asked him to make a phone call for you?
Yes, I had asked him to call my fiance for me.
And did he agree that he would do that?
Yes, he did.
And then did he make the phone call that you requested of him?
Not at first he didn't. Maybe like the 3rd request that I asked him, he made it for me.
Okay. And was there any physical contact between you and Mr. Jensen before he did make the phone call that you requested
Yeah,
of him?
we had a slight misunderstanding, and I ended up shoving him a little bit.
So you pushed him.
Yeah.
And it was after you physically pushed him that Mr. Jensen then made the phone call that you requested of him.
Yes.
Well, tell us about what happened then between you and Mr. Jensen after that, after he'd made the phone call.
Well, after that, I came and apologized to him, and from that point on, we just started conversing on a daily basis. Just small talk at first, and I saw his picture hanging in his cell with his suit on. And I asked him what was that about, and he described to me what his case was detailing.
So this picture that you're describing was that just a normal photograph, or
No, it was a newspaper clipping.
So he has a picture of himself in a suit with a newspaper clipping hanging on the wall in his cell?
Yes.
And so when you and Mark Jensen first started talking to each other, what sort of things did you and he talk about?
Basically just family at first, then it slowly progressed into the aspects of his case, and then he started telling me about it.
Well, tell me about everything that Mark Jensen said to you about his case.
Well, first I had asked him, I said, what you charged with? And he explained to me that he had been charged with murder for murdering his wife. And that he went to the dynamics of it and said, what they said he had done as far as, poisoning her. And he was explaining to me that, she wasn't, mentally intact, that she had a history of family mental illness, and that, the doctors would prove that her family had a history of mental illness, and it would vindicate him of the charge he was charged with.
And so he seemed happy with this case in that respect.
Yeah, he seemed pretty comfortable with it.
Now, was there any aspect of his case that he expressed discomfort to you about?
Other than the fact that he was incarcerated at the time, no.
So he was unhappy about being incarcerated?
That seemed to be the only thing.
Okay. And then what happened after that? What did you talk about after that?
We had briefly talked about, he had mentioned his, a guy named Klug was one of his co-workers.
And what did he say to you about Mr. Klug?
He said that Mr. Klug was testifying against him in this case, and that probably would hurt him.
Tell me everything that you can remember about what he said to you about Mr. Klug.
He said Mr. Klug would ultimately be the one that would bring him down to get him locked up in prison. And he wished that he would just go away. So I asked him what he meant by that. He said he wished that he would just, just disappear till the trial was over. And at the time, I really was like trying to pinpoint exactly what he was trying to, come about in this conversation.
So what did you do in order to try to figure out where he was going with this conversation?
I asked him, well, what did he want done with Mr. Klug? And he said he wanted him, to be held or to, just go away until the trial was over with. At that point, I wasn't for sure whether I should believe him in what he was saying or not. So I just, took it upon myself to see just how far he was willing to go with this.
And what did you do in order to accomplish that objective?
I told him that I could possibly make it happen for him. And so I set into motion a series of plans with phone calls to my fiance. And I told Mark, I said, well, this may cost you about $1,000. And he wanted to say, that's pretty cheap, and I just gave him a ballpark number to see, what he would say. So when he agreed to that, that's when I made the phone call to my fiance and told her, just to say everything is as planned, and to, pick the money up from his mother.
Now, before you talked to your fiance, was there any more specific conversations about this $1,000, about how it was to be paid, whether it's to be paid all at once or in installments or anything like that? Yeah,
it was going to be paid in installments. One was $575, the other would have been $425.
So the $575 was to be paid up front, and the $425 was paid later?
Yes. Before the first one was going to be before Mr. Klug, and the second half would have been after his release, so-called release.
And what was the objective of picking up Mr. Klug and sitting on him for a while, or holding him for a while?
So that he wouldn't be able to testify in his trial.
And how far along were you and Mr. Jensen in your discussions concerning this plan?
We pretty much had reached the point that I had convinced him that I would be able to make that happen. He gave me the name of the business and his address in Appleton. So when I had my fiance check on the computer to see if it was true, in fact it was.
Whose address in Appleton?
Mr. Klug's address. It was a little town outside of Appleton, like Kimberly or something like that.
And did you and Mr. Jensen discuss the manner in which the payments were to be made?
Yes, he would pay the $575 first, then after the trial was over and Mr. Klug was released, then I would get the other.
Well, how did Mr. Jensen explain to you how he was going to do this in view of the fact that he was
going to have his...
Please, sir.
Okay.
Let me finish the question before you start answering, okay?
Okay.
So, did Mr. Jensen explain to you how he was going to get the payments to you in view of the fact that both of you were at that time incarcerated?
Yes, he was going to have his girlfriend give the money to his mother, and my fiance was to pick the money up from his mother at some disclosed location between them.
Did he ever explain to you why he would have his mother get the money instead of just the girlfriend herself getting the money to him?
He said his mother was more understanding of what he was doing. He said his girlfriend would have a fit if she had to partake in any of that.
And as you're sitting here now, do you remember if it was his girlfriend or his wife that he was referring to?
Well, whoever the young lady was, his wife is dead. I mean,
And so in furtherance of this plan, did you have any discussions with your fiance?
yes, so I called her and I wrote her a letter telling her to get in touch with the district attorney. And when I made the phone call, I made the call so that it would seem as though we were in accord with what Mark was trying to plan.
And tell me what you mean by that.
When I got on the phone, I told her that I was going to put someone on the phone to talk to her, and I wanted her to say that everything is as planned.
And who was the person you put on the phone then with her?
Mark Jensen.
And you just heard that phone conversation? You just heard it played, correct?
Yes.
And is that the phone conversation you're talking about?
Yes.
And that was Mark Jensen's voice that we hear coming on the phone?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd request that I have the opportunity to play this to the jury.
Objection? Other than I'm not sure if this has been marked.
Right, it needs to be marked,
Madam Clerk, what would be the exhibit number?
92?
Okay, we'll have it marked after I'm done with it.
all right, states 92 is received.
So I'm not sure I know how to get this thing to play. I think it's right here.
Excuse me, you ready to camera?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll just camera on. Yeah.
She don't go any public at this moment.
To come pick up somebody.
Yeah,
Excuse me?
yeah,
For?
what about people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. Say it again. That's what I say to her?
To him.
Oh. Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, everything is planned.
Okay.
Okay?
So good, this is good?
Yeah.
Thank you. So good.
Alrighty.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Here's it.
Thanks.
Yeah, so, you'll probably get a call sometime today to go, let you know where to go get it at.
Okay.
Alright?
Yeah.
You talk to Mom yet?
No, I called, nobody answered.
Try her again real quick.
I was going to have this marked as the exhibit, so this is... So, Mr. Thompson, that was Exhibit 92, and is that the phone conversation that occurred between you and your fiancée, Kim?
Yes,
And that third voice we heard was the voice of the defendant, Mark Jensen?
yes.
Oh, it's still going? Get that thing to turn off. Now, after that phone conversation occurred, was there any further activity between you or discussion between you and Mr. Jensen concerning this this plan that you and he had hatched?
Yeah, he just, seemed he was real happy that everything, was coming together. And I assured him that it would be okay and that he had nothing to worry about.
And were there any further conversations after that concerning this plan?
Yeah, he was more or less worried. He said, what if he decides to talk after the trial? Then I told him, I said, well, you have a plan B then. He said, excuse me. He said, plan B, he said, well, what about go away for permanently? I said, well...
I'm sorry, what would, plan B be?
Yeah, plan B would be for him to go away permanently. I said, well, that'll cost you more. He said, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Did he ever discuss with you plan B again?
No, not after that. We didn't talk about it anymore.
Were there any further conversations about the original plan about abducting or holding Mr. Kloop?
Yeah, as far as just for the amount of time that he wanted him held, I asked him would it be 2 weeks, a month, or he said 30 days would be good. We had go ahead.
Well, go on. What else had you said about that?
Well, no, we had exchanged a few notes too, as far as what the plans were on pieces of paper, and I would write down my responses. He would write down his responses, and we would show them to each other. Just to keep down some of the conversation from going on around us.
Now, why would you hold up notes instead of just talking to each other?
Well, I had went to court down in Chicago, and when I got back from court, they had moved me to the other side. So this was our only way to continue to converse about this subject, was to hold notes against the glass, and he would read mine, and I would read his. And I saved all the notes that we had talked about.
So these were different cell blocks, but they were separated by glass panels?
Yeah, we were on the same cell block for about 2 weeks until I went to court. Then when I came back, they put me just right next door to him.
Well, how long were you two in the same cell block together?
For about 3 weeks.
Now, during the time that you and he were in the same cell block together, could you describe the layout of that cell block?
Yeah, when you come into the cell block, all of the cells were on the left-hand side. And at the end of the cell block, there was a radiator where people would come and congregate at. And in the middle of the cell block, there was a table we would play games at and eat dinner at, and some other seats off to the side. And there was big plate glass windows, like 6 on either side, with the control center in between the two of them. So you could see both cell blocks. And at the back of the cell block, it came to like a corner, and I would stand on one side, he would stand on one side. This was after I got moved, and we would just, talk right there in the corner, either through the radiators or through notes. I would press mine to the glass, he would read it, and he'd press his to the glass, and I would read it. That was after I got moved.
Now, what do you mean talk through the radiators? I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah, you could yell through the radiators, you could hear what each other was saying from either side.
There's a ventilation system
Yeah,
or something?
kind of like a little ventilation, yes.
And now, during the time that you and he were in the same cell block together, did Mr. Jensen ever try to show you any of his paperwork or any transcripts that he had with him?
Yes, he showed me a little bit of it where he was talking about where he was supposedly had poisoned his wife, and it's basically about her mental health condition. I really didn't get too much into it with him because I told him it shouldn't be showing paperwork to everybody, but what he showed me was enough for us to converse about, about the case.
Well, as you're sitting here today, do you remember what it was that he actually showed to you?
Well, he first put out the newspaper clippings that showed me all of those and what was being said in court and what his bond was and, how he would, bond out. And I was like, well, what you gonna do when you bond out? He said, I don't know. He said, I'm trying to beat this case. And he was talking about just getting away, and I mentioned Panama to him. I said, he was talking about getting away when he was on bond. I mentioned Panama to him. I said, Panama is the only place that doesn't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. And from that point, he told me that what his family was trying to put together for him as far as bail with a house and some cash for him to get out on bail again.
And did he ever talk to you about whether or not he actually murdered his wife?
Yeah, that came along right before I got moved. I went down to his cell one day, and he was sitting there on the side of his bed. He had kind of had a rough day, a couple of guys were giving him a hard time, and I guess it just was the overall case that came crashing down on him, and he teared up, and I asked him, what's wrong? He's like, oh, nothing. And I said, come on, man, we've been talking this long now, just tell me what's going on. And he broke out into a full-fledged cry, and he said, I didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry. I'm like, sorry for what? What you talking about? He said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I said, you didn't mean to do what? He said, I didn't mean to do it. He just kept saying he didn't mean to do it.
I'm going to request these items be marked as exhibits, Your Honor. You've seen these? Each one of these documents marked as an exhibit. Well, she's marking those as an exhibit. Do you know a person by the name of Aaron Dillard?
No.
You never heard of Aaron Dillard?
No.
While you were in the same cell block as Mr. Jensen, was he talking to anybody else in the cell block, or were you the only person he was talking to?
No, there were a few other people that he spoke to on a regular basis.
Who were those people?
Mr. Clanton, Mr. Bush, a few other guys I really didn't know. Bush was my cellmate, and Mr. Clanton, he was another Fed inmate in there. So those pretty much the only people that I really talked to were those two and Mr. Jensen.
When you were having these conversations with Mr. Jensen about abducting and sitting on or holding Edward Klug, were any of the other inmates present, or did any of the inmates in a position where they could hear what was being said?
I mean, a few of them tried to, hang by the radiator to see what we were talking about, but I would either be quiet when they were around or told them to move around and go somewhere else while me and Mark talked.
I'm going to show you these items and marked as exhibits 93 through 99, and I'll ask you if you can identify what those exhibits are.
Yes, these are this is my handwriting. These are some of the notes that me and Mark would pass back with, writing, hold to the glass back and forth.
And these were your notes?
Yes, these are mine here.
So these are the communications that you were making to him, and then he would write something back to you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so let's go through these one at a time. And these aren't necessarily in order? Are they in order?
No, they're
Can you,
not.
if I gave you the opportunity, would you be able to put those in order, do you think?
Let me see here. Oh, this is the first one where,
S93 is the first one?
yes, where he said he got a call from someone inquiring about Kim.
Okay.
And I told him I didn't know who that could have been. And this is the second one.
Okay, now this reads,
Say this, you got name?
S93. S93 reads, my dad said they got a call this AM, questioning calls from Kim's number. Well, who wrote that? Did he write that or did you write that?
That's more or less his handwriting there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I heard your objection. I didn't hear there was something said over here.
And I didn't hear either one, so.
My objection is the witness already identified it as his own handwriting.
Right, but this one here is from Mark though, because it says right here that he got a call from his dad, questioning a call from Kim's number, don't know who. That's not my handwriting right there. And this is his also.
I'm looking at S94. Now, so S94, could somebody be watching that place? That's Mark's
That's
handwriting?
Mark's handwriting.
Okay, now let's stop here for a minute. Let's go back to S93. Put the S95 down. Is there anything on S93?
I'm going to object to any opinion by this witness as to whose handwriting. He's not an expert in handwriting.
Well, if he claims to have seen it displayed through the glass,
But he's also the witness who identified it as his own handwriting.
well, that's subject to cross-examination, of course, but he can make an identification if he's familiar with the history of the document and can link it to the accused.
Now, so let's look at S93. Tell me again about this note. Tell me everything you know about this note that's been labeled S93.
Okay, this one, it says, he got a call from someone about,
No, I know what it says,
Okay.
but I'm not so much interested in knowing what it says. What I'm interested in
what
knowing
was it
is
leading up to?
how did you come into possession of this note?
I don't know how that note came to be mixed in with mine, but that's the one that he showed me through the glass.
So this is Mark's handwriting.
That's Mark's handwriting.
And this is the note that Mark left for you, or
Yes.
displayed for you.
Yes.
And that reads, my dad said they got a call this AM, questioning calls from Kim's number. Don't know who, I don't know what that means. And then there's a line that goes up here, talk to my dad this AM, haven't been able to get them all day, question mark, question mark. Now, did you respond to any of that? Is there any of this communication over here that is your response to that or not?
Yes, let me look through here. No.
So these were Mark's communications to you. Do you remember what kind of communications you gave back to him?
Yes, I told him, I said it probably was the detectives that was investigating the bank robbery I had did, because that's the only clue I could come up with that may have made them call back to that number. I figured maybe my line had been tapped, but still wired, you know.
And and then he asked on Exhibit S94, could somebody be watching that phone?
Right.
And you know which phone he's talking about? Is he talking about your phone, or is he talking about?
Objection calls for speculation.
Okay. Before he wrote this, could somebody be watching that phone? What was the last thing that you'd written to him? Do you remember?
Well, that was one of the first things. That was like the beginning of our writing, because I had just got moved to the other side then. After that is when all this other took place.
Okay. So let's direct your attention to S. Now, can you put these in order?
Okay.
Starting with the beginning and go through them in order. Okay, so now these are in the order that you believe that you wrote them out?
Yes.
So that would be S98 is first, S97 is second, S96 is third, S99 is fourth, and S95 is fifth. Okay, so let's start with S98. Does it start at the top and work its way down, or start at the bottom and work its way up?
It's kind of intermingled.
So looking at these, which was the first thing that you wrote, if you can recall?
The middle where they called Kim down to the station and asked her if I did any more crimes. They think I've done more banks and some other stuff.
No, it's not stuff. Read exactly what it says.
Oh, bullshit. Okay, but I came clean when they first questioned me. There isn't anything else, but handling things okay for a change. I was referring to, how I was going through with my daughter, but it is a must. Let me know after your visit Sunday. I'm going to go call Kim now. It was the last statement is a referral to had his mom received the money from his girlfriend yet for Kim to go pick up.
And then how did he reply to that? Do you know?
Well, he replied on some different paper. I don't know what he did with his copies, but I kept all mine.
But do you know what he said?
He said basically that he wasn't able to get in touch with his mom, but that she would have the money, and her and Kim were to contact one another by phone to make arrangements to get the money.
And then when did this portion up here get written?
That was in regards to the money too. That was like right after this here. Because when I called Kim, Kim would say all his asses should be. And he was supposedly talk to his mom and let her know what Kim would be talking to her about.
Well, now, were you and he in separate cell blocks at that time?
At this time, we were.
Then how was it that he was able to get on the phone as you were talking with
Well,
you?
we were in the same cell block then when the phone call transpired.
I see. So this was written before or after the
After
phone?
that. This was so that we were trying to figure out a way that his mother, that Kim could go get the money, something that she could say that would let things know that it was okay for her to come get the money.
And then,
Should I have the exhibit number of the vote, Mr.
that was
Chairman?
S98, Counselor. I'm sorry. And I'm going to direct court and counsel's attention to S97, and that was the next communication you held up, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the first thing, as you're reading this, what's the first thing that you wrote on this note?
Can't mom drop it off?
And what's that in reference to?
Could his mother somehow get the money to Kim?
And how did he reply, if you recall?
Kim would have to come down and meet her somewhere.
And how did you, what did you write in response?
That's all good. Who drops it off, it doesn't matter.
And is that, and then I see this is written here, was this written in response to something from Mark, or was it Mark Jensen, or is this something that was part of this note
It
here?
was part of that. It says, can Kim come pick up the 575 from mom today? Kim can call her
Does it say, can Kim come pick up the 575 from mom tomorrow?
Yes, and Kim can call her now for the money, 575.
And how did Mr. Jensen respond to that, if you can recall?
Well, he wanted it to be picked up from a mailbox, from someone's house in a mailbox.
Did he say whose house or whose mailbox?
No, he didn't say who.
And then I'm looking at, for court and counsel's benefit, XS96. I see there's writing right side up and upside down. Which of these notes is written first? This one that's right side up, or the one that's upside down? And here's the one that's upside down. Or don't you remember?
Oh, that's something totally different there. That was about my sentencing guidelines.
That was about my,
Sentencing guidelines, some federal stuff we were talking about.
Who was talking about that?
I was talking about that with someone else.
Okay, so this is another note that you left for some other person. This note that says,
Yeah.
after lunch, let's work on this guide sheet.
Right.
Work on guide sheet after lunch.
Yes, that was federal sentencing guidelines. There was another federal inmate on the unit with us, and he was on the side with Mark, and I had got the papers in the mail. He was going to show me how to calculate my federal time up with it.
I see. So, which of these notes were written first? This one up here or this one down here?
The one in the middle. It says, I hate to burden you, but do you think mom could leave me $30 for stamps, soap, toothpaste, and deodorant and lotion? And he said, sure.
And then you leave your name and what, number? And
Yeah, a jail number. And she was supposed to leave it when she came to visit him Sunday, but I don't think he talked to her about it, so she never did.
And then and how did he reply to that?
He said, sure.
And then I see up here, what does it read?
Don't forget to tell mom to leave me $30.
So what kind of communications occurred between you and Mr. Jensen between this point here where you're asking for the $30 and this point up here where you're reminding him to ask her for the $30? Do you remember?
Well, this was between, let me see what's after here. Yeah, this was between the first exhibits and the plan for Mr. McClure to disappear.
Okay. Now directing your attention to Exhibit S99. Which of these was written first?
The top one.
And what is that? And read that, will you
It
please?
says, how long will it take or how long will he be kept? That's your call. He asked me, basically, how long should he be held down, or where will he be kept, and how, what will be happening to him? And
So he was doing that with a written thing. He was asking
Right.
you how long he'd be held and where he'd be held and that sort of thing?
right, and I asked him how long, and he said 2 weeks. So then I wrote, 2 weeks is cool, but he can be made to leave town or made to sign an affidavit saying he totally lied on you.
And
Because
how did he respond? How did Mr. Jensen respond to that?
basically with questions, because he was speaking about suing Mr. Klug, and I was like, well, why sue him? I mean, for what? And he said, well, I said, you can make him sign an affidavit saying he totally lied on you.
And then what's the next thing that you wrote here?
This is all for you, so whatever you want done will be done.
And how did Mr. Jensen reply to that, if you can recall?
He said, okay. He nodded his head through the glass and said, okay.
And then what's the next thing that's written there?
Getting the job done is what...
No, what's right here?
It's all good. No tongue will keep him from ever saying anything. You know this case has no statute of limitations.
And how did Mr. Jensen respond to that?
He says, I know.
And then what's the next thing that you write here?
We should have a clarification that Mr. Thompson is reading from a letter. In terms of Mr. Jensen's responses, there's nothing in writing. It's just what he claims is remembered.
As I understand it, the document from what you are reading is one that was prepared exclusively by the witness, and that the recitations about the responses
Or from his memory?
attributed to the accused they're from his memory, and they're not on the paper.
That is my understanding, and I certainly wasn't intending to convey anything other than that.
No, I was just concerned that because it sounded like question and answer so rapidly. So I just wanted to clarify.
Okay. Do you think that's been done adequately, or, okay. And it says here, getting the job done is what he does best.
Right.
And had you ever given Mr. Jensen any information when you were in the same cell block so he would know whom you're referring to when you talk about he?
Yes, I told him that a friend of mine would abduct him for him.
Would abduct Mr. Klug?
Yes.
So tell me about the conversation that occurred between you and Mr. Jensen in the cell block when you two were in the same cell block together. Don't look at this exhibit now, but just go back to this conversation that occurred between you and Mr. Jensen in the cell block where you were describing to Mr. Jensen's benefit this friend of yours who you felt could abduct Mr. Klug.
I told Mr. Jensen, I said, well, I might have a solution to your problems. So I have a friend of mine that, does this kind of work, and I'm sure he'll do it for you for a decent price. And as we went on to talk about what the price would be, and then we came upon that statement there. I mean, like I said, I told him, I said, this is what he does best. Is take care of situations like this, and Mark was in accord with it.
And, you're even sitting on or holding somebody for 2 weeks for $1,000 seems like a bargain basement price. Did Mr. Jensen comment on that?
Yeah, he said that seems kind of cheap.
Is there such a friend, by the way, or are you just making this person up?
No, I'm just making all this up.
And then what's the next thing that's written down here?
Trust me, Mark, come October 8th, you'll just about have your old life back.
Now, as you're sitting here today, can you remember between this point where you'd written, getting the job done is what he does best, and then where you wrote, trust me, Mark, come October 8th, you'll just about have your old life back. As you're sitting here now today, can you remember what it was that Mark Jensen had written and held up for you to see?
No, not exactly. It was a short response, though. I'm just speculating more to the
No,
fact
don't
that-
speculate,
okay.
sir. Then the next thing, I'll be here for at least 2 months, but I know this process won't have to be done again. What is that? What are you referencing there?
And that reference, it was to the context that once Mr. Klug was kept and held, that we wouldn't have to repeat the process again.
And had Mr. Jensen sent you or written up for you any kind of communication that you can remember that caused you to write this response?
Yes, he said, what if he talks? And that's when I responded with that.
And he wrote, what if he talks? And you responded with this,
With
or you
that.
responded with this?
With both of those, because I wrote that, then I was running out of paper and I wrote it on that.
So this is now Exhibit S95, and read what it says that you wrote there.
It says he won't, his life depends on it, but like I said, to eliminate that possibility, there's always plan B.
And do you remember how, if at all, Mr. Jensen responded to that?
No.
Now, these notes that you identified as having been notes that Mr. Jensen held up for you, S93 and S94, do you remember if these notes that Mr. Jensen wrote were written before, after, or interspersed with these notes?
It was before all of that.
Okay. I'd request that exhibits, let me get all the exhibit numbers here. S93, S94, S95, S96, S97, and S98 be received in evidence subject to cross-examination.
The objection?
Object to 94.
May I see them, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Yes, those are the objection, 93 and 94.
What is the objection?
His ability to identify.
I'm sorry?
His ability to identify Mr. Jensen's writing.
Well, according to what he states, as I understand it, and you're welcome to correct me, he states that Mr. Jensen held these up to the glass. So whether they're Mr. Jensen's writing or not, the witness is claiming that he was expressing these thoughts via these documents. So your objection's overruled.
I have no further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examine.
Mr. Thompson, it's fair to say 2007 was a very bad year for you.
Sure. Yes.
And on September 6, 2007, you arrived in the Kenosha County Jail, right?
Somewhere around that date, yes.
You were there because you had robbed a bank in Gurnee, Illinois in June 2007, right?
Yes.
You and your wife had robbed the bank together, right?
No, I robbed the bank.
Well, your wife was your accomplice. And when I say wife, I mean the person I should say fiance. Your fiance was your accomplice in that bank robbery, correct?
No, she had nothing to do with that.
Your fiance went into the bank in Gurnee, Illinois, examined the interior of the bank, came back to the car, and told you what that bank looked like, right?
Objection, this is irrelevant, Your Honor.
Overruled.
I asked her who was inside the bank and how many tellers there were. I asked her that.
Right. After she had gone in and looked around and noted how many tellers there were, right?
After I questioned her, that's what she told me.
And then you went in and stole $24,000.
Yes.
And you've said that was just an act of desperation, right?
Yes.
And that act of desperation you undertook because your home was being foreclosed upon, right?
Two homes.
Were being foreclosed upon, right?
Yes.
You have a child at home with your fiance, right?
Yes.
You didn't have any money, right?
Yes.
And then you committed another act of desperation in August of 2007, right?
Yes.
You robbed another bank, right?
Yes.
You robbed a bank in Madison, Wisconsin in August 2007.
Yes.
True? And you did that with your wife as well?
She was in the car. I already did that myself.
But your fiance was with you, right?
Yes.
And as you sat there on September 6, 2007, in the Kenosha County Jail, you were also facing a charge for theft of firearm, right?
Yes.
That is, your mom had accused you of stealing a firearm from her home, true?
Yes.
And you had admitted to your mother that you stole that firearm,
No,
right?
I did not.
Well, you knew from the criminal complaint that your mom had said you admitted stealing the firearm from her, right?
I never read that.
Are you telling me that you didn't know that your mother was the one who had told
I knew
the police?
who made the complaint, but I never admitted that.
And your mom had said that you stole the firearm to pay off drug debts, right?
That's what.
Your Honor, how is this relevant? And how does this come in? I'm
I know,
All motive, Judge. And bias.
well, and I agree with that, and then also, I know 608 subsection 2 this last sentence. Well, the whole subparagraph. 906.08 subsection 2. Go ahead. The objection's overruled.
Could I have the last question read back?
And your mom had said that you stole the firearm to pay off drug debts, right?
Yes.
And had you stole the firearm?
No.
Your Honor, I object. I don't see how this comes in under section 906.08, some paragraph 2. It indicates...
Well, let's give us a few minutes, would you, folks? Please don't talk about the case. Please all rise. What did you want to say, Mr. Jambois?
Your Honor, this witness has not been asked to testify about his reputation for truthfulness, and he hasn't testified about his reputation.
That's in the disjunctive. That's one possibility. The other is a cross-examination of a witness if the evidence that is about which he's being questioned, if the questions pertain to whether he's a reliable and honorable, honest person or not.
What? Here's what it reads, Your Honor. Specific instances of conduct.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
That's correct. Specific instances of the conduct of a witness for the purpose of attacking or supporting the witness's credibility, other than a conviction of a crime or an adjudication as provided in section 906.09, may not be proved by extrinsic evidence.
So that part means that he's going to have to take the witness's answer, and he's not going to be allowed impeachment on it.
Well, all it says is they may not be proved by extrinsic evidence. Okay.
Right. Extrinsic evidence means he can't call other witnesses.
Now, here's what they can do. They may, however, subject to section 972.11 sub 2.
That's the rape shield law, which has nothing to do with it.
I understand. If probative of truthfulness or untruthfulness, and not remote in time, be inquired into on cross-examination of the witness, or on cross-examination of a witness who testifies to his...
Don't read that part. That's not relevant. Just end up with may be inquired into upon cross-examination of a witness, period. If it's probative of truthfulness, if it's not remote in time, he can ask him about it, but he'll have to take his answer. He won't be allowed impeachment.
Okay.
So if the defendant, whether he steals a gun from his mother, whether he uses money to buy drugs instead of pay off his house like he claims, these are all things that the jury has a right to consider in deciding whether this is someone who ought to be believed.
Okay. I understand now, Your Honor.
Did you want to say anything else?
Just to add in terms of motive and bias, anything that he has pending at the time that he begins putting into effect a plan to set up Mr. Jensen is all relevant to motive.
Well, I wouldn't think that but there's nothing pending about whether he was stealing to buy drugs or stealing a gun from his well, is that charged, theft from a firearm? Theft of a firearm?
It was charged in September.
You did say that.
Yes.
But the drug part would not, but I let it in under the
And I think
section.
there's some, well, if we get to it, we'll get to it. I mean, there's some other there's some other things as well. I think his general obstructing of justice while in the jail, but.
All right. Ask the jury to come back in, please.